Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of American Civil War. Behind the battles.
we're behind them, all right.
We're going behind the battle in one of the most infamous POW camps in American history. One of the deadliest as well. These guys were legitimately coming out of this camp when they got liberated by the Union, looking like literally Holocaust guys, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like bones.
Insane.
Crazy. And
Right, guy.
that's even if you survived.
Right.
But talking about Andersonville Prison, also known as Camp Sumter. It was a Confederate prisoner of war camp, only for a year, too, which is crazy, too. During the final 14 months of the war. It opened February 1864 after the decision had been made to relocate Union prisoners to a more secure location. This decision was made because of the battles taking place near Richmond, where many prisoners were being held, and as a way to procure a greater food supply. Well, that didn't work.
Right.
Originally, it was about 16.5 acres, enclosed by a 15-foot-high stockade. June 1864, it was enlarged to 26.5 acres. Stockade was rectangular of dimensions of 1,620 feet by 779 feet. There were two entrances on the west side of the stockade, known as north and south. This allowed for a space about 5 feet by 6 feet for each prisoner. In an emergency, 8 small earthen forts around the outside of the prison could hold artillery to put down disturbances within the compound, and to defend against Union cavalry attack.
The first prisoners arrived at Camp Sumter late February 1864. After the course of the next few months, approximately 400 prisoners arrived daily.
Jeez.
By June of 1864, over 26,000 prisoners were confined in a stockade designed to house only 10,000. The largest number of prisoners held at one time was 33,000 of August of 1864. The old rebel government was unable to provide the prisoners with adequate housing, food, clothing, medical care. Due to the terrible conditions, prisoners suffered greatly, and a high mortality rate ensued.
Or mortality.
Right. The branch of the Sweetwater Creek, called Stockade Branch, flowed through the prison yard and was the only source of water for most of the prison.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
How clean is that?
Right.
Robert Kellogg, Sergeant Major in the 16th Regiment Connecticut Volunteers, he described his entry as a prisoner into the camp May 2nd, 1864. As we entered the place, a spectacle met our eyes that almost froze our blood with horror and made our hearts fail within us. For us were forms that had once been active and erect, stalwart men, now nothing but mere walking skeletons, covered with filth and vermin.
Jeez.
Many of our men, in the heat and the intensity of their feeling, exclaimed with earnestness, "Can this be hell?
They can.
God protect us." And all thought that he alone could bring them out alive from so terrible a place. In the center of the whole was a swamp, occupying about 3 or 4 acres of the narrowed limits, and a part of this marshy place had been used by the prisoners as a sink. And excrement covered the ground, the scent arising from which was suffocating. The ground allotted to our 90 was near the edge of this plague spot, and how we were to live through the warm summer weather in the midst of such fearful surroundings was more than we cared to think of just then.
Further descriptions of the camp can be found in the diary of Ransom Chadwick. He was a member of the 85th New York Infantry Regiment. Chadwick, his regimental mates, taken to the Andersonville Prison, arriving on the 30th of April, 1864. An extensive and detailed diary was kept by John L. Ransom of his time as a prisoner at Andersonville.
You can read those anywhere.
Right. Father Peter Whalen arrived on the 26th of June, 1864. He arrived to muster the resources of the Catholic Church and help provide relief to the prisoners.
At Andersonville, a light fence known as the deadline was erected approximately 19 feet inside the stockade wall. It demarcated a no-man's land that kept prisoners away from the wall, which is made of the 16-foot-high stakes driven into the ground. Anyone crossing or even touching this deadline was shot without warning by sentries in the guard platforms, which they call pigeon roost. It was considered possible, although not established, that the modern term deadline in the sense of a time limit derives from this.
All right. At this stage of the war, Andersonville Prison was frequently undersupplied with food. By 1864, civilians in the Confederacy and soldiers of the Confederate Army were all struggling to obtain sufficient quantities of food. The shortage of fare was suffered by prisoners and Confederate personnel alike within that fort. But the prisoners received less than the guards. Unlike the captives, the guards did not become severely emaciated or suffer from scurvy as a consequence of vitamin C deficiency due to a lack of fresh fruits and vegetables in their diet.
Okay.
They don't want to get scurvy.
The poor diets and resultant scurvy was likely a major cause of the camp's high mortality rate,
I think so.
as well as dysentery and typhoid fever.
Yeah, that would do it.
These resulted from filthy living conditions and poor sanitation. The only source of drinking water was a creek that we said, but it also served as the camp's latrine.
Ugh.
It was filled at all times with fecal matter from thousands of sick and dying men. Even when sufficient quantities of supplies were available, they were of poor quality and inadequately prepared.
Oh, wow. Bastards.
Dude, you guys are living... I understand, like, the camp's shitty. You guys are living there. Why are you shitting in the water?
Right. I don't think they care anymore. They're just like, whatever.
That's crazy.
There were no outfits given to prisoners, whose own clothing was often fallen to pieces. Some cases, garments were taken from the dead. John McElroy, a prisoner at the Andersonville, he recalled at one point in time, before one was fairly cold, his clothes would be appropriated and divided. Damn.
Meaning dead.
Yeah, his body's still warm. And I have seen many sharp fights between contesting claimants.
I bet.
Man.
Although the prison was surrounded by forests, very little wood was allowed to the prisoners for warmth or cooking. This, along with the lack of utensils, made it almost... Because I guess you could take them out on a chain gang or something, have them cut their own wood, but...
You don't want to have them fire because they can start the place on fire.
That's true. This, along with the lack of utensils, made it almost impossible for the prisoners to cook the meager food rations they did receive.
Oh, wow.
Which often consisted of poorly milled corn flour. During the summer of 1864, Union prisoners suffered greatly from hunger, exposure, and disease. Within 7 months, about a third had died from dysentery and scurvy, and they were buried in a mass grave, the standard practice for Confederate prison authorities at Andersonville.
Wow. 1864, Confederate Surgeon General asked Joseph Jones, an expert on infectious disease, to investigate the high mortality rate at the camp. He's like, something going on over there. He concluded that it was due to scorbutic dysentery, which is bloody diarrhea caused by vitamin C deficiency. Ooh. 2010, historian Rosemary Drisdell said the hookworm disease, that's a condition not recognized or known during the Civil War, was the major cause of many of the fatalities among the prisoners.
How'd you know? You didn't examine one body, lady.
Hookworm, too, though. You can get that from dirty water.
I'm sure you can. At the time of the war, the concept of a prisoner of war camp was still new. It wasn't even until 1863 that Lincoln demanded a code of conduct be instituted to guarantee prisoners of war an entitlement to food and medical treatment.
Oh, wow.
And to protect them from enslavement, torture, and murder.
Damn, so before this, you didn't have to?
I guess not.
Wow.
Andersonville did not provide its occupants with these guarantees, though.
Wow.
The prisoners at Andersonville, without any sort of law enforcement or protections, it functioned more closely to a primitive society than a civil one. Oh, dude, yeah, there were a bunch of monkeys literally living in a pen.
Right. Jeez, OP. As such, survival often depended on the strength of a prisoner's social network with the prison. You got to have a lot of followers on the OX. A prisoner with friends inside Andersonville was more likely to survive than a loner.
I assume.
Social networks provided prisoners with food, clothes, shelter, moral support,
Probably the main one right there.
trading opportunities, and protection against other prisoners.
Right. Especially that trading opportunities, or
Right.
somebody in your little gang comes up with a little bit of food and you know they're going to share it with you.
Damn right. One study found that a prisoner having a strong social network within Andersonville had a statistically significant positive effect on survival probabilities, and that the closer the ties between friends as measured by such identifiers as ethnicity, kinship, and the same hometown, the bigger the effect.
Oh, yeah, get a bunch of hometown boys.
You remember when we used to go down the old dirt road?
A group of prisoners calling themselves the Andersonville Raiders.
Oh, nice.
They attacked their fellow inmates to steal food, jewelry, money, and clothing. Another group started up, organized by Peter Big Pete Albury.
Peter Big Pete.
And that was to stop the larceny, calling themselves the Regulators.
Oh, fantastic.
They caught nearly all the raiders, who were tried by the Regulators Judge Peter McCullough and a jury selected from a group of new prisoners. Oh, so they don't know nothing about what's been going on.
All right.
This jury, upon finding the raiders guilty, set punishment that included running the gauntlet, being sent to the stocks, ball and chain, and, in 6 cases, even hanging.
Ooh-wee.
Where are they getting this resources for this?
This is insane. The conditions were so poor that in July of 1864,
Oh, what he's a poet and didn't even...
Captain Henry Wirtz, he paroled 5 Union soldiers to deliver a petition, signed the majority of Andersonville's prisoners, asking the Union to reinstate prisoner exchanges, to relieve the overcrowding and allow prisoners to leave these terrible conditions.
Or how about you guys treat the black soldiers like humans once you get the prisoners, and we'd continue exchanging prisoners?
Right. Well, this request was denied by the Bluecoats. The petitioners, who had sworn to return, reported this to their comrades.
During the war, 45,000 prisoners were received at Andersonville. Of these, nearly 13,000 died.
Damn.
The nature and causes of deaths are a source of controversy among historians.
We know what it was.
Some contend that the deaths resulted from Confederate policy and were war crimes against Union prisoners, while others state that they resulted from disease promoted by severe overcrowding. I mean, both things can be true.
It was just
The widespread food shortage in the Confederate states altogether, the prison officials' incompetence, and the breakdown of the prisoner exchange system.
I mean, these guys could barely start up a country and barely fight this war, let alone take care of prisoners.
Well, as we do know, though, during the war, disease was actually the primary cause of death in both armies.
Yep.
More people died from that than battle wounds. Infectious disease was a chronic problem due to poor sanitation in regular as well as prison camp.
A young Union prisoner, Dorrance Atwater, chosen to record the names and numbers of the dead at Andersonville for use by the Confederacy and the federal government after the war ended. He believed correctly the federal government would never see the list. Therefore, he sat next to Henry Wurz, who was in charge of the prison pen, and secretly kept his own list among other papers. When Atwater was released, he put the list in his bag and took it through the lines without even being caught. It was published by the New York Tribune when Horace Greeley, the paper's owner, learned the old federal government had refused the list and given Atwater much grief.
They don't even want to acknowledge that shit. Because they were like, they're going to be like, why didn't you just do prisoner exchanges then?
They were like, I don't even know what Andersonville Prison is, guy.
Right. The what?
What?
Area 50 what?
Excuse me? Atwater believed that the commanding officer Wurz had been trying to ensure that Union prisoners would be rendered unfit to fight if they survived the prison.
Well, looking at pictures of a bunch of them, I would say he's right.
I wouldn't even want to put them back into war. These guys are...
Prisoner of war, Newell Birch. He also recorded Andersonville's poor conditions in his diary. A member of the 154th New York Volunteer Infantry. Oh, he was captured on the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Oh, well, good for you. Probably would have died. He was first imprisoned at Belle Island in Richmond, and then Andersonville. He's credited with having been the longest-held Union prisoner of war during the Civil War.
Oh.
He survived a total of 661 days in Confederate hands. His diary is in the collection of the Dunn County Historical Society in Menominee, Wisconsin, not Michigan. Mimeographed copy is held by the Wisconsin Historical Society as well.
Good for you, Wisconsin. Planning an escape from this camp was routine among thousands of prisoners. Most men formed units to burrow out of the camp using tunnels. The locations of the tunnels would aim towards nearby forests 50 feet from the wall. Once out, escape was nearly impossible due to the poor health of the prisoners, right? They can get out.
They're going to make it so far.
Prisoners caught trying to escape were denied rations, chain ganged, or killed. Plain dead was another method of escape, too.
Just throw you somewhere?
Right.
Okay, yeah. The death rate of the camp being around 100 per day, made disposing of bodies a relaxed procedure by the guards. They didn't care.
All right, just tossed them.
Prisoners, they'd pretend to be dead and was carried out to the row of dead bodies outside of the walls. Right, they're just stacking these guys. As soon as night fell, the men would get up and run. Once Wurz learned of this practice, he ordered an examination by surgeons on all bodies taken out of the camp. Confederate records show that 351 prisoners escaped, though many were recaptured. That was 0.7% of all inmates. The U.S. Army lists 32 as returned to Union lines. Of the rest, some likely simply returned to civilian life without notifying the military, while others, they probably died.
Yeah, those guys are like you. I'm going home, man. Piss off. Are you really going to put me in jail after what I just endured, motherfucker?
Those 30 motherfuckers, those 32 guys better got some increased rations and some damn lifetime benefits from the Army.
Oh, no. They're like, all right, you haven't been in battle for a while, so...
Fresh body, like, sir, I'm literally bones.
You're on the front lines, baby. Yeah, actually, you have to push the cannons. And it's going to rain tomorrow, so you better get some sleep, bud. Oh, and we leave in actually half hour or so. Damn. In the latter part of the summer of 1864, the Confederacy offered to conditionally release these prisoners if the Union would send ships to retrieve them. Andersonville was inland, with access possible only via railroad. That's tough.
You're trolling them now. Yeah, we'll let them go. You can bring a ship. That's hilarious.
In the autumn of 1864, after the Battle of Atlanta, all the prisoners were well enough to be moved.
Who were well enough?
Who were well enough to be moved were sent to Florence Stockade, which is near Florence, South Carolina, and Camp Lawton near Millen, Georgia. At Millen, better arrangements prevailed. Prisoners were transported by rail to the port of Savannah. After General William Tecumseh Sherman began his march to the sea and destroyed Millen, the remaining prisoners returned to Andersonville.
He didn't save them?
I guess not. He was like, no.
Yeah, I don't think so. Andersonville, they was liberated by the Union Army in May of 1865, with the prisoners inside being found and described as human skeletons amid hellish scenes of desolation. After the war, Henry Wurz, he was the commander of the stockade at Camp Sumter. He was tried by military tribunal on charges of war crime.
Ooh.
The trial was presided over by Union General Lew Wallace. And featured Chief Judge Advocate General Jag, Prosecutor Norton Parker Chipman.
Fantastic.
Remember that TV show, Jag?
Jag.
Never seen it. I just always seen...
Gay.
I just always seen commercials of it because it was on USA.
Right.
And wrestling.
Yeah. A number of former prisoners testified about conditions at Andersonville, many accusing Wurz of specific acts of cruelty. The court also considered official correspondence from captured Confederate records. Perhaps the most damaging was a letter to the Confederate Surgeon General by James Jones, who in 1864 was sent by Richmond to investigate conditions at the camp. Jones had been appalled by what he had found, and he reported he vomited twice and contracted influenza from the single hour he toured the camp. His graphically detailed report to his superiors all but closed the case for the prosecution. Yeah, I had to.
Wurz presented evidence that he had pleaded to Confederate authorities to try to get more food and that he had tried to improve the conditions for the prisoners inside. Nevertheless, he was found guilty, sentenced to death. November 10th, 1865, he was hanged.
Damn.
He was one of the only three men executed after the war for war crimes, and the only Confederate official. Wow. The others were guerrillas, not even a part of the Confederates officially, Champ Ferguson and Henry Magruder.
Oh, fuck.
Revelation of the prisoners' sufferings was one of the factors that affected public opinion in the North regarding the South after the close of the war.
Damn.
Remember what they did at Anderson?
Right.
Those bastards.
Sons of bitches. Contrary to common belief, Wurz was not the only person prosecuted for his actions.
Wurz up.
Right. At Andersonville. James Duncan, who had worked in the quartermaster's office, was convicted of manslaughter for allegedly withholding food from some of the prisoners. Oh, dude, there's probably that going all the time. Duncan had previously been called on as a defense witness for Wurz, but he was arrested when he arrived to give evidence.
August 1865, an expedition of laborers and soldiers, accompanied by a former prisoner named Dorrance Atwater and Clara Barton.
Oh, Clara Barton, huh?
They came to Andersonville to identify and mark the graves of the Union dead and transform the place into the Andersonville National Cemetery. As a paroled prisoner, Atwater, he was assigned to record the names of deceased Union soldiers. Fearing loss of the death record at war's end, Atwater made his own, Thanks to his list and the Confederates' records confiscated at the end of the war, only 460 of the Andersonville graves had to be marked as unknown U.S. soldier.
1890, the Graham Army of the Republic, Department of Georgia, bought the site of Andersonville Prison through membership and subscriptions. It found that as their number was growing less year by year, and as it required a great deal of money to keep up the place, it would be better for them to offer it to the Women's Relief Corps, the auxiliary to the GAR. When the WRC was in annual session in St. Paul, Minnesota, 1896, representatives of the Georgia GAR came before them and offered the prison, asked them to accept the gift and keep it from desecration.
Please accept this gift that we can't afford to take care of.
All right.
The women did accept, and they accepted it as a sacred trust and immediately appointed Elizabeth, not Elizabeth, just Elizabeth. Elizabeth Turner as chairwoman of the board, bitch. Chairman of the board to beautify the grounds. A house for a caretaker was needed, and as the women did not want to build it within the old stockade, more land was purchased, making the acreages within the enclosure about 87 acres. 10-room house was erected, a caretaker installed. And then the tedious process of making a park was begun.
Oh.
Bermuda grass was planted root by root.
Damn, that took a long time.
A pear and pecan orchard set out. Oh. Nice. And a rose garden planted, with rose bushes sent from almost every state in the Union. Several states were given ground upon which to erect monuments to their dead soldiers.
Well, that's fantastic. Awesome. Where's this at? We got to go. Andersonville.
Obviously, the whole episode is about.
These states were Massachusetts, Ohio, Michigan, Rhode Island, that's not a state, and Wisconsin. Turner, having died while in discharge of her duty, the WRC also erected a monument of her in the park. In 1910, the site was donated by the WRC to the federal government. Take that shit. In the following year, the memorial tablet set up by the donors was unveiled. Upon the tablet are the names of the incorporators of the WRC, as well as the names of the Board of Trustees from 1909 and 1910, and the names of the Committee on Transfer to the Government.
The National Prisoner of War Museum opened in 1998 as a memorial to all American prisoners of war. Exhibits use art, photographs, displays, and video presentations to depict the capture, living conditions, hardships, and experiences of American prisoners of war in all periods. The museum also serves as the park's visitor center.
The cemetery is the final resting place for the Union prisoners who died while being held captive at Andersonville. The prisoners' burial ground at Camp Sumter has been made a national cemetery. It contains 13,714 graves, of which 921 are marked unknown.
Somebody lied.
As a national cemetery, it is also used as a burial place for more recent veterans and their dependents. Visitors can walk the 26.5-acre site of Camp Sumter, which has been outlined with double rows of white posts. 2 sections of the stockade wall have been reconstructed, the north gate and the northeast corner.
Awesome.
So that's Andersonville.
That's Andersonville. We'll have several probably episodes on POW camps as there's tens of them for each side, but there's probably 3 or 4 that were really big and had some crazy stuff going on. Everybody thinks of, for the Union side, that prison that was in Chicago. Camp Douglas or whatever. But we'll cover this later. Elmira Prison, believe it was the biggest, it had the most population of POWs for a Union POW camp. So we'll take a look at that sometime down the future, plus Camp Douglas and a bunch of other camps of the Confederates. Oh. So, yep, that's behind the battles.
We have forts and places and events.
There's lots of stuff to do. Lots.
Ships and...
Lots. Maybe we'll do a boat.
A boat. A boot. A boot.
Maybe we'll do a boot.
Maybe a boot.
Maybe the first ironclad. Maybe we'll do something about that.
We'll do the great ironclad of...
The Monitor.
The Monitor.
So we'll... Either way, whatever we decide to do, we'll be back next week for more Behind the Battles.
Yep, that's it.
American Civil War stuff, We're the mother who's again.
Bang, dang.